Hi, Jesse again from Jesse Lead Woodworking, and this is part 3 of my restoration for this walnut table. Now, it might not look like I'm on part 3 because this table is now completely in pieces, but this is all part of the process. I've done the leaves, I've done the assembly on the top. Now it's time to flip this thing over and make sure that it's all shored up on the ends and on the legs and on the pieces that connect to the bottom of the table. Behind me, you can actually see I have the table now completely flipped over with the leaves removed, and I was able to take the legs off of the base on the bottom of the table. Now, on the ends, these were only secured with just some flathead screws because back then those were really the common tool of choice. And I'm still going to keep all of the hardware. There is nothing that I want to change with regards to that. The only thing I did change was the clasps that hold the table leaves together, because that's how I fashioned the rest of the table clasps that go on the bottom of the leaves that I manufactured in the back. Other than that, this table is secured with about 8 flathead screws and a lot of these 1-inch by 1-inch blocks that glue up the sides and the corners. And it really does help shore everything up when they're actually in contact with the wood. Now, because this table has been moved around for so many years, these connection points really aren't good anymore. So I actually went around the table and I have removed all of the blocks from the table, as well as the blocks that hold the corner posts to the beams that go across as the rail pieces that you can see laid out behind me. These I will replace. You can see here, this is one of the legs. And these legs are held together with dowels. Now, obviously, I took my time in separating the dowels from the legs here, because more importantly, you really don't want to incur any damage here, especially to the wood. So I took my time and I was able to wiggle these free. And all I'm going to do when it comes to these legs and these joints is to remove the old glue that's sitting on the edges here and fill this back in with some fresh new glue. And then once I have these now reclamped together, I will then put in the corner 1x1 pieces and tie this all back together to then put back onto my table. Okay, so I'm just checking in. I am now done completely sanding the bottom of the table, as well as the arduous process of sanding down these legs. This is one of the legs now that I've completely sanded it, and I've also just put some water on it just to give me an idea as to how the color is going to look on this leg, and it looks phenomenal. So I'm pretty stoked on this because it's been a long couple of hours here going at this table. Now, I've also watered the table behind me so you can have an idea as to how this is all going to look as well. And just a note, when I took apart these rails, and much like in older furniture, sometimes not all of the wood is necessarily the same. And what I ended up finding out is that these rails actually are made of oak. Now, that was a bit of a curveball, because then I now have to try to find a way to match the color of the table and the legs. Now, it's not really that complicated, but because I also wanted a tung oil finish on this, I really wanted to make sure that I applied the oils at the exact same time, because if you apply stain to the wood, that is now going to absorb into all the pores, and then the tung oil obviously won't have anywhere to go. So I did a little bit of an experiment and I did some tests, and what I ended up coming up with was a dark walnut finish, and I also oil stain, and then I mixed that with the tung oil and a small amount of the D-Lemonene to cut it down and also to get it to absorb as much as possible. Now remember, this wood is over 100 and something years old, so I wasn't necessarily expecting the perfect outcome, but you can actually see on this wood, it actually came out pretty freaking nice. And there's only some parts here that are actually going to be exposed. For example, this piece here that'll be sticking out and actually holding the edges of the table up. And if I take that and use that as a reference to what my leg looks like, you can see it's a pretty darn good match. So I'm really fired up that I actually was able to do this all in one shot. I've actually put 3 coats already on this rail piece, and for the most part, it's nearly dry. Now, all I'm going to do is when I reassemble this on the rest of the base and put the legs together and glue everything together, I will likely just hit this with the same application of the tung oil on the bottom just to get everything consistent. And if it doesn't seep in, then I can just wipe it all off. All right, folks, so I'm checking in and I'm super happy with the progress so far. You can see behind me now, I've actually had an opportunity to put the rails back together along with the legs and then secure this back down to the bottom. And then after that, I went ahead and added blocking back into the corner pieces that go around the edge of this table to really make sure everything is nice and square and it's also super tight and re-glued back together. So it's going to give it a ton of strength, and I'm really, really happy because there is absolutely no wiggle room in these legs, and they were quite wiggly before, and that was mainly because most of the joints were broken on all of the dowels. And so once I had that apart, I was able to finally clean those up a little bit and then screw them back together and just hold them together with the glue. And I relied on my fancy Cabinet Master clamps, 2 on each. And then anytime I needed to kind of add a little extra force, I used a wooden block and a soft mallet rather than hit the actual legs themselves to make sure that they stuck back together, because they did take a little bit of effort. Okay, so now we're back here in my basement, and I've already started to do the tung oil finish on these leaves. I got them all laid out here, and I've actually gone ahead and done the first coat on the first sleeve, and I'm going to go across the rest of these, but I just wanted you to see a view on the color that's already starting to develop with the first application of the tung oil. Now, I won't go through the entire process, but basically I have a 50-50 combination of D-Lemonene and this pure WALRUS tung oil, which I've used before in my past projects. It's a fantastic product, and I really, really like it a lot. The only preparation that I did before I put this tung oil on was I hit this with a tack cloth. I've done 220 grit across the entire thing, and on the profile I actually hit it with 440 just because I wanted a super smooth finish on the bottom or on the edges. So I'm going to go ahead and continue to keep going with this here by the color that's already starting to look on these. It's going to look pretty awesome. All right, I'm out here in my barn. I'm about ready to hit the bottom of this table. It's ready to go. I got my mix ready to go, and I'm going to make this quick. All right, folks, I'm checking in, and I've already just put the first application on top of this table, and it looks awesome. So I'm gonna keep going on with this process. You don't need to see the whole thing through. I'll show you a picture of what it looked like before, and now you get a chance to see what it looks like after. That first application with the 50-50 really does a great job, especially on a piece of wood like this. It's super thirsty because it's old and it's dry, and it will suck up that oil and it'll get in there nice and deep. And that's the point of cutting it on your first and second and third application. You want to develop that rich color just like I have right now, and I'll continue to do that. And then those final applications will be with the 100% pure tung oil, which will give it that waterproofing finish. But for now, I'm gonna keep going, and the next time I check in, this table is going to be completely assembled and completely ready for use. Hey folks, here is the final project. It took a long time to get here, but the outcome was absolutely exactly how I had hoped. This has now 6 coats of tung oil finish on here. It is 100% waterproof, non-toxic, and food safe. So my daughter can beat the heck out of this table, and I can simply clean it up at the end of the day without having to worry whatsoever. The table leaves here have a slight difference in coloration. That's okay as well. After about 6 months to a year, you will never know that I made these table leaves myself. I also had the privilege of turning my own table leg in the center of this, because if you remember, this table did not have one. So I turned one out of a solid piece of black walnut, which I'll show you a picture of as well. It is now supported all the way through, and I will continue to leave this just in this configuration. However, all 3 table leaves in the middle can be removed. It is convertible, including these ends here, which can fold down, which is even more nice when and if it's needed. And this goes as short as 2.5 feet, which is really quite an amazing table, considering, you know, this is over 120 plus years old. So I appreciate you sticking along for this entire process. If you want to see more, continue to follow along, subscribe to my channel. It really allows me to continue to do this, and it drives me to want to share more. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you on the next project.